Here we are. Hi, everybody. I'm Jade Ritam. I'm a spiritual psychotherapist and also known as Carrie Trubenbeck. That's the name I'm licensed in. However, for the sake of this podcast, I am Jade Ritam. And this is my guest today, which is Dr. Pat Diamond. She's an incredible, exceptional woman. I am so honored to have her as a guest on my podcast. She was not the first, but one of the first women to ever attend Stanford Medical School after she went to engineering school. I mean, this woman has an incredible history and a lot of experience in the medical field. And as we know, the medical field has had many, many challenges. And we're going to have a discussion about those challenges as well as aging, as well as whatever comes up. You're going to find this is a brilliant woman. And excuse me, I have a phone call and I forgot to turn my phone off. So sorry about that. Anyway, this is going to be a really exciting podcast. I mean, I'm excited. Let me put it that way. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Pat Diamond, a retired anesthesiologist with a long history of incredible experience.
Well, thank you, Carrie, for that beautiful introduction. Yes, it is true. I was one of the first wave of women to be admitted to medical school in the late 70s. In spite of a lot of legislation that had asked for equal opportunities, it didn't really come to pass until 1975, when the National Organization of Women, of which I'm a proud member and always have been, actually filed a case against the government, a class action lawsuit, actually against all the medical schools in the United States, that they were not complying with the Equal Opportunity Act, the Title IX, equal access to education for women and minorities, and a couple of other equal opportunity rules. So in the process of this class lawsuit, I'm assuming the government, who gives a lot of money to medical education through the National Institute of Health, research money, decided that they needed to notify the medical schools that they needed to get in compliance with affirmative action, with Title IX, with equal opportunities, which was passed in 1965. I was surprised how far back the history went. So I have this sad feeling that if it weren't for now, I would not have been in medical school, because around 1976, the medical schools started admitting more women. And by my year of application, which was 1978, they were admitting 30%. At least Stanford, where I went, was admitting 30% of their new class had to be women. So that's how I felt. I was like the first wave of American women, the big wave, to get in. And I was thrilled. I was totally thrilled. It was made clear to us women that we were lucky to be admitted, that it was only that the government had forced Stanford to do this. And we were reminded of how many men we had displaced in the class. But my generation of women who were the women's libbers of the 60s, Gloria Steinem was our hero. We kind of just ignored that and thought, hey, the time is for us to be equal in this society. You know, why should we not have the opportunity to become doctors? There were women in the past who had been doctors, but they were kind of a handful every year. And a lot of them in the early 1900s actually went to medical school because they founded women's medical schools just for women. And those schools were turning out women doctors, a handful. I believe it's Boston Children's Hospital started out that way, which is now a renowned hospital in Boston. But it's kind of around the 1920s, the government decided that they needed to standardize medical education.
Yeah.
Yes, they wanted everybody to be doing the same thing and to shift everything from kind of a natural form of medicine, kind of a lot of
what we call alternative medicine today.
What we call alternative medicine.
And it was preventative, and it was, I mean, a lot of it was herbs and things that could be found free. It wasn't about profiting on people's ill health at that time, right? That's
not at all. Not at all.
And that the government intentionally came in and shut every single medical school down that was doing preventative care because there was no profit in it.
Yeah, they closed down all the women's medical schools.
There you go.
Which really, once I read that, I was so angry. But we'll leave my emotions aside.
No, it's okay to express them on this podcast. It's really, heart, mind, soul. It's all emotion.
Yeah,
it's all part of it.
It's so sad how the United States, I'm going to talk from the 1900s on because I can't deal with the whole history, but it was ruthless in preventing women and Blacks and certain groups of immigrants from having equal access to opportunity. And it wound up contributing to the mess we're in now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always astounded, but the fact is that the United States is the one developed country in the world that does not have universal health care for its citizens.
There's too much money in it.
Yeah, our country or our people, our leaders have leaned towards how can we make money doing this? And the other countries in general actually care about their citizens and how can we give the most care to the most people with equal opportunity for everybody.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Pat. I'm just going to interject here for a second. When I was 17 years old and I was living in Brazil, I noticed a very different approach. And I ended up later on, when I went back there for a long visit, getting some medical care. And I was just amazed at the gentleness and the humanity, the love and care. I felt loved. I felt cared for there. I didn't feel like I was just another bed, another number, taking up space or just, somebody's got to be there in order for people to make money. But this whole system we live in was based on the illness factor, because once you're ill, then you can make money on the pharmaceutical, you can make money on pills. You can make money through the pharmaceutical industry. You can make money through the insurance industry. It's such a big network, and there's so much money in it that I have heard, and I want to ask you about this, if you've ever heard anything or what you think of it. I have heard that they already really, they already discovered the cure for cancer, but there's so much money in cancer foundations, cancer research. There's so much money in it that they can't afford to provide the cure. So they have to keep hiding it. And there's just too much money in it. So that's how inhumane I think our system has become. And I believe that, but I don't know, I'm just assuming that it makes sense to me, but I'm wondering what you think.
Well, I haven't heard that. I am, even though I'm retired, I'm very interested in medical health care delivery, and I'm following a lot of places where doctors are expressing their opinions, because in my humble belief system, I believe doctors are the best people in the whole industry. They're most likely to act with a moral compass. I'm not saying they're saints. I'm not saying that there aren't greedy doctors, but in my experience with my colleagues, we were focused on patient care, and we were actually salaried at a lower rate than our our comrades out in private practice.
Right.
This
But
was
you
in
also,
1982. So there are models where you can be focused on patient care, earn a good wage, not a greedy wage, not 2 or 3 mil. Well, actually, you'd have to adjust that to 10 million today. But back in the 80s when I came out, my colleagues were making about $1 million a year, compared to my package of it's embarrassing to say, actually. I'll quote when I became partner. It was more like $200,000 a year with a package, with a retirement package, with a 401k, healthcare, all the benefits. So, and then I didn't have to worry about making money because I wanted to be focused on patient care plus my ability to get better and better and give better and better health care.
but you were working for a system that supported that, Pat, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah. I worked for
it was,
Kaiser. I
yeah.
worked for Kaiser in California. Unfortunately, it isn't a widespread system, because it was opposed. When it started in the 50s with Henry Kaiser Aluminum, he wanted to give health care to all of his workers, and he started Kaiser Foundation Health with Dr. Garfield. And so it was a union based healthcare system, and we were the group was called communists, socialists. We were not allowed to join the AMA. I'm just saying this as an illustration of the opposition there existed to preventative care, care to everybody who's a worker. We didn't care their color, their creed, their, anyone who walked in the door and had our coverage was getting great care. And of course, we took care of emergencies too, who weren't our people. So I might have wandered a bit here. Can you remind me of what your first question was? I just wanted to put in a good word that there are systems that could work.
Right. And the interesting part of that is that they tried to shut Kaiser down because it wasn't based solely on profit. And
Well, they didn't. They didn't. They were suspicious of us because why are we so happy to give so much care with so little cost to all these people
well,
who were in
you
our
were,
system?
yeah, well, and that's messing with the basically what the message is that it should be okay. It normalized. What got normalized is that is healthcare for profit. That's what got normalized, and Kaiser was really opposing that. And they didn't want that so they created suspicion, call it socialist, communist, because those are words where as soon as you say that to an American, it's a red flag. They go up, there's fear, suspicion. So all you have to do is use those words, put that out in the news, put that out in the media, and people will pull away. They get scared. That's how they control it all.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there are interesting things along the way of our history that just kept reinforcing we were never going to be a single party healthcare system or a single payer. And the single payer is always assumed to be the government. And one of the things that happened is in the 1920s, besides closing a bunch of the medical schools down and wanting to standardize medical education and push it towards pure science, pure scientific evidence. In other words, if you had a cure, something that seemed to be working, in order to be taught to medical students or even incorporated in medical practice, it had to be scientifically proven that it actually worked. And these kind of studies take several years. We're still doing that through the FDA. All of it has to be science.
It's government control.
Yeah, and as opposed to these alternative therapies, which eventually wind up being scientifically proven, some of them. And meanwhile, the population has been deprived of using them. So I would recommend we somehow speed up the approval process. That did start to happen in COVID. But COVID is a whole nother story. I don't even
it was to their advantage.
I don't even want to go there because they knew this could happen, and they already had a cure in their back pocket. So
the truth is the gig is up. Slowly but surely it's all starting to unravel, and the truth is starting to come out, and people are starting to wake up and not fall prey to these terms that get thrown around for control purposes. I mean, think about it. The fact that anyone would try to make a profit on your ill health takes humanity out of the equation. It takes your feelings, your worth. You become just a number.
Yeah, and then it's easier to deny. It's real easy to deny claims.
Yes, it's dehumanizing, and it has, and then and then we have no compassion for the guy. Yeah, he was. I'm not saying we should go around and shoot CEOs of healthcare systems, but I am saying that I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't happened sooner, because so many lives have been destroyed.
Well, that's a
these insurance companies. I mean, destroyed.
That's a tribute to the incredible forgiveness rate of the American people. I mean, even malpractice suits where it's been totally negligent, patients will say, I don't want to sue. They did their best. They tried. That is something that has totally shocked me in my career.
That's a beautiful thing to hear.
But it's true. The American people as a whole should be given sainthood for what they put up with because they love their doctors. They love their nurses. Now the CEOs have not achieved love yet. But of course, I'm not advocating going around to shoot them because honestly, some of them could have the answers too about how to fix this. In fact, when Brian Thompson, the CEO, was shot and killed, he was in charge of the insurance arm of United Health. the guy who's in charge of the medical arm came out with a statement after Brian was killed saying, of course, we're very sad. Our good friend, we've lost him, a valuable person. But we will admit that there are a lot of problems with the delivery of health care in this country, implying he knows what they are.
Yes, they
He
do.
knows
They
what
all
they
do.
are.
They all
And
do.
and that they could be made to be accountable in the sense that the federal we have to go to our government. Those are the leaders we elect. We don't elect the CEOs, but we do elect our federal leaders. That we can go to the government and say, we need you, the Senate, the Congress, the executive branch, although Trump doesn't seem to be showing tendencies this way, but we need you to put a serious limit on how many cases can be denied. And let's get that down to 1%, guys, not 30% of your denials, which United Healthcare was up to.
Unless there's fraud, why should there be any denials? Period.
Well, exactly. There is fraud in the system, Carrie,
Well,
or Jade, and that's kind of how this started out. That Medicare was passed in 1965 and completely funded by the government, by our tax dollars, for people over 65 to get health care. But the government didn't really set it up to manage for fraud. So there was fraud. There were doctors who were terribly greedy, but they were found out and, delicensed. But then the government got kind of lazy or tired and said in 1996, we don't want to run this Medicare program anymore. We think the private industry can run it better than us, which is a shocking statement.
Oh my God, I didn't realize this, Pat. Really?
Yep.
They
privatized.
I just learned something.
It was called the privatization of Medicare.
Oh, I always thought Medicare was government. It's privatized.
No, that's what a lot of people think. No.
Oh, God.
So what this was is Medicare, the government, took these private insurers, of which, there was Blue Cross, Blue Shield, there was Kaiser has a Medicare contract, United Healthcare, Humana, they all have Medicare contracts. So they go, yay, yeah, we'll take your Medicare. And instead of Medicare 1 and 2, it was called Medicare Advantage. So anyone who has a Medicare Advantage program is being managed by an insurer, not the government.
Okay, but anybody who doesn't have an Advantage program, it's the government? Or
that's a long story. No, other people had to be buying their own insurance. They were not covered by the government. The people who qualified for Medicare.
But not everybody is on the Advantage program, right?
No, you can be on the old Medicare, which is Medicare A and B.
Right. And is that by the government? That's my question.
Yes.
Is A and B?
Yes,
okay, that's what I'm saying. So people who want to pay a higher premium will go on the A and B, and the people who go to the Advantage programs are actually paying lower premiums, but they will pay. They pay if and when they have to be go into surgery or whatever, they're going to pay a fee versus the one who pays their monthly premium. That's
pretty much it. There's at first it was working well. From 96 on, these companies were happy with what they were receiving from the government. Mm-hmm. But then there were little glitches along the way. And then the healthcare giants began to lean towards, we need to make profits for our stockholders.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, it was stockholders.
Again, it goes back because as soon as you get into privatization, it's not even the government, it's the ones that are running things behind the scenes, the ones that we don't even know about, and they're the ones that are controlling this whole system, and there's absolutely no regard for human life. None.
Not much.
None.
I mean, to have United Healthcare was shocking in their denial rate, and they were way above the norm. Meaning, the only way the government has to look at these big entities, and thank God there's only about 5 of them right now, is to see who's denying what and what's the average and what are the causes these people are being denied for. And I personally know of some cases where people were denied for no good reason. No good reason, I'm sorry. And I advise these people to enroll in Kaiser. Thank God in California we have Kaiser. They're
I know,
also,
unfortunately, we can't get Kaiser in other places. I mean, we can't get it. We can't.
It isn't that Kaiser didn't want to spread. They went to the big 1992 healthcare crisis convention. It was already known in 1992 we were approaching a crisis. That was what, 30 years ago?
Yep.
And I've read the details of what went wrong, and how people felt it was our one last chance to solve the problem. They had insurance companies, they had the Clintons, which was part of the reason it didn't go. Nobody liked the Clintons back in 1992. It was the doctors, the AMA was there, and some patient groups. The Kaiser, as we're called an HMO, meaning when you go, you pick a doctor for your primary, but the doctor has to be a Kaiser doctor in the system.
Right.
And people go, oh yeah, that's too much control. I want to pick my own doctor. You can, if you don't like the doctor you go to first, you can pick from many doctors. We provide a lot of doctors. And you can get second opinions if you have like a cancer you're not sure about and you want to check outside the system. But anyway, there's a lot of freedom in it. HMOs are not the devil. They're not perfect, but they're not the devil.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, this for-profit group is similar to the devil. Anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought.
No, you're talking about the HMOs that they're, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the HMOs went, and Kaiser was begging to have a say at the platform. Everyone else was getting to push their ideas about how we can fix healthcare. Kaiser was dreaming at the time because our leadership knew we had a good system and we were proud of it and we were giving good care and we weren't gouging. We didn't cheat on the government, meaning we didn't order unnecessary tests so we could earn money. In fact, we didn't want unnecessary tests. One of our goals was efficiency.
Good.
But still
So
with
what
the
happened, Dad?
care. Yeah.
What happened?
So they didn't talk to the HMOs. They did not let the HMOs in. They weren't listening.
This is so rigged and set up for the ones that are making money on the system. They don't want the system to change. And we're going to have to keep talking about it and get the word out that people are being trapped in a system that is not for their highest and greatest good. And the only way that's going to change is if people start to wake up to this fact and start to push back.
Well, you know what gave me hope, what is giving me hope now is the reaction to the killing of Brian Thompson. Now, I'll
In
tell
what
you what
way?
really, what, if you want to go into that, I
Yeah, I
don't
do.
have.
I wanted to know in what way. Tell me what you.
Okay. First of all, I don't agree with vigilantism. So I'm not really happy he got killed. In a way, it would have been nicer if he were just wounded. It could have actually brought about kind of the same discussion. First of all, the American people in general unleashed a lot of hostility about the medical health care delivery system in the United States, because enough of them now are starting to become awake and aware, and they are
Mm-hmm.
not being the sweet, forgiving people
Mm-hmm.
they've been for 50 years, I'd say. And
Good.
good for them, good for them. Who should be stepped on and trundled over so some CEO can make 30 million a year plus stock options?
It's just
Now,
about making the rich richer, and yeah, it really is. But
nobody should die for that.
I think
And
it's a whole. Oh, go ahead.
we're talking patient conditions. I'm not talking about a 99-year-old who's dying of heart failure. I'm talking about 30-year-olds. And these are the kids. I have kids in that group. And some of my children have had trouble with healthcare delivery system. They have growths. They have possible cancers. They have things that need to be investigated. And their doctor orders an MRI because a lot of these don't show up on X-ray. And the big company, it actually was United Healthcare in this case, denies the MRI. And the doctor even then writes a letter of, hey, you're wrong. This is medically indicated. What are you talking about? And the company replies, sorry, on our protocol, this is unnecessary. Who is your protocol? What are you basing it on?
It's whatever they want it to be. That's
So
what people have to understand. There are people up top.
Mm-hmm. So our government is not watching them closely enough, or is not motivated to stop the greed. The greed. And I'm a little bit nervous about what Trump's going to do, because he has traditionally supported the rich getting richer.
I think this is way beyond him. I think, and it's really. I don't think, even if he makes some decisions, they can be reversed. I don't think he's a threat at all. He's just another cog in the wheel. The president of the
Yeah,
United
in a
States.
way, it's
We're not
surprising.
ready.
The president, yeah, the president doesn't really have a lot of power, but he
Not
has the
really. Not
best. He has
anymore.
Republican majority, but I'm seeing that even they're beginning to oppose a little bit. Trump knows he can't come in and wipe out Obamacare. Now,
But
what
I,
did
yeah.
what did Obamacare do? Obamacare is a different program than Medicare. Obamacare is just for financial need. Any age, anyone who can't afford medical coverage can get into Obamacare with significant subsidies by both the state and the federal government. For instance, I've investigated that system, Covered California, which is the Obamacare in California. So I called him and I gave him my daughter's profile. And they said, oh, yeah, we can get her covered at Kaiser, because I said I want Kaiser too. We can get her covered at Kaiser for $300 a month, which is pretty good in California for a private person trying to get their own health care. She's not working for a large corporation that offers Kaiser. So I said, fine. Then And of course, she would have to submit all the proof that she was not earning enough. But then I pulled back and I called Kaiser Direct and I said, what are you charging private individuals for your best coverage? And it was $700 a month. Now, that doesn't mean Kaiser is gouging, because they're accepting people in from Obamacare. It just means that if you don't qualify for Obamacare, you are going to be paying some pretty high rates. So it's still tough for everyone out there. And that's why there's still this dream of universal health care out there. Now, Kaiser, God bless them, they're not immune to what the private health care companies are doing. If those guys are existing by denying claims, Kaiser is going to start losing too much money to give the kind of care they want. And so they do have to increase their premiums depending on the marketplace. And the marketplace is driven by these for-profit healthcare giants. So, but Kaiser in its best, it's trying to stay immune. And it has its problems right now, mainly because it's too small. It's just in California, Oregon, Washington, and we have a presence. We have a whole hospital and clinics set up in Washington, D.C., right across from the Capitol building. And that we did shortly after 1992. We said, if they won't talk to us, we'll talk to them. We're going to be right across the street, and we're going to show them that all their federal employees can benefit from being enrolled in our healthcare system. That happened. There's a lot of federal employees that are offered Kaiser by the government. But it still didn't break down this.
But systematically, they won't allow it to flourish. They're keeping it contained intentionally.
They don't want it to flourish.
Not enough money in it.
Yeah. Well, what would these CEOs of the insurance companies do for a living? Maybe we should just offer them retirement and say, okay, we're taking over.
Oh, no, it's way beyond
But that's
that.
A little dictatorial. Yes.
Yeah, well, and no, these are people at the top. They're used to a constant flow of money that's ungodly. You couldn't even spend it, but it's not about that. It's about power and control. So, but I want to ask you, what do you think it's going to take for us to change the consciousness in our country, in the United States, to change the consciousness from one of allowing a system to make money on our ill health and on our ill fortune, or if we're born with a handicap? I mean, what is it going to take for people to finally go, oh yeah, there's something wrong and immoral. There's something immoral, not moral, about making money off people's health. And to change that consciousness, because that's the only way this is going to change, when more and more people realize this is inhumane, this isn't right.
Well, it's going to take enough of society in general who influence their representatives in Washington, who develop a conscience too, with all the pressure, to actually address these companies. They can say, we forbid, or we're going to phase out healthcare industries that are traded on the stock market. We're going to make it illegal. There is no reason they can't do that, and we're going to make it illegal because everybody agrees it is hurting people, it is immoral, it is just so wrong. And we used to have a saying, which was pretty cold, but it kind of explained things. We would always say, when we'd hear these terrible stories from mostly from outside Kaiser, it would be, death is cheap. The patient dies. Chances are the family doesn't have the wherewithal to fight it as being wrong. And meaning emotionally, but even monetarily, you got to go to a malpractice lawyer. You got to convince them to take the case. And sometimes they won't. They're also, well, what's in it for me? And then you probably have 2 to 3 years of depositions and fighting. So a lot of families just don't have the wherewithal to fight it. So these companies get away with it. So if the little people grow and say, hey, I elected you to the Congress, or I elected you here, and this is what I want you to be addressing. And the congressman is getting, or woman is getting flooded with this demand, and all of them start getting flooded, they're going to begin to come up with some stuff. Now, if I could, I'd like to get back to to Brian Thompson. We were talking about what was the good that came out of this. Well, at the same time, Brian Thompson was getting killed on December 4th. There was another healthcare giant, and this is anesthesia, by the way, Anthem, who is Blue Cross Blue Shield, for profit, made a statement that we are no longer going to pay for anesthesia time that goes over what we think is the correct amount of time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, isn't that shocking? Isn't that like the most incredible statement?
It's like, we're going to make sure you unplug whether it's needed or not. You're going to unplug the life for it because oh my gosh.
So now what this does, it's awful. First of all, the anesthesiologist doesn't deserve to have to work for free when a case goes over. So that's exploiting the medical healthcare personnel.
Right.
Secondly, so what? Are we supposed to leave the patient there, just wake them up in the middle of it all and say, sorry, we'll have to come back tomorrow?
It's insane.
Okay.
No, I mean, this is...
So what happened, Carrie, is when they came out with that statement, and they came out November 1st, the first people who raised the alarm was the American Society of Anesthesiologists. And they immediately called Anthem and said, my God, what are you thinking? We need to talk about this. And they called representatives in Congress and said, this is outrageous. What more proof do you need? So then the Anthem talked to the anesthesiologist, and Anthem said, okay, we hear your complaints. We got to think about this and get back to you. However, this policy was going into effect this February.
Oh my God.
February. So then, let's see, a few days later, okay, now what happened is Brian Thompson gets murdered on December 4th. A few days later, on December 10th, Senators Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, and Josh Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, who agree on very little else, they're enemies, they wrote a letter to the CEO of Anthem and said, this policy you're pushing is draconian. I love the word draconian. On December 9th, Representative Richie Torres of New York introduced a bill in the United States House of Representatives that would ban insurance companies from setting such limits on anesthesia care.
Ooh.
They have to legislate it. Oh, and then I loved what he said. What did he say? Oh, and then the bill also set up a way to audit to make sure these insurance companies were paying for anesthesia care as much as was needed. And we cannot, here was his quote, we cannot trust insurers to do right by doctors and patients out of the kindness of their hearts. There is a need for legislation that prevents any insurer anywhere in America from micromanaging the length of anesthesia care in a medically necessary surgery. The purpose of medicine should be to prevent pain rather than cause it through the denial of anesthesia.
I like that he put it should be preventative. There it is. Preventative care versus what they're doing now, which is cutting us up.
Well, the thing is, the poor doctors, they get stuck in the middle because, of course, no anesthesiologist is going to walk away in the middle of the case because they can't bill.
Of course.
But eventually they're going to go broke. They will. We have our living needs too. And now my salary wasn't coming from my billing hours, right. but my healthcare insurance had to make sure that that they were getting enough money from the government and from their paid insurees to cover my salary, which was negotiated and was traditionally much lower than people get in private practice. So it's a zoo out there. But anyway, that was positive. Even Congress said, hey, wait a minute. This is very evil what you're trying to do here. So the bill was passed. Anthem backed down and said, okay, we retract that. We will continue to pay for anesthesia as always. And that was the end of that little discussion. So I'm showing you that Congress can be effective. And the insurance company, the for-profits are getting so greedy, they're even offending Congress. Because Congress needs medical care too. And probably a bunch of them have Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Well, the good thing about this also is that it's teaching whatever you want to call them that are draconian in their approach to maintaining control and power in the world, but specifically the United States right now as we address it. The good thing is that they're learning that if they're going to go in that direction, they're going to start to get pushback. And before they weren't, they had the control and everybody else just went along with it. And the politicians were in the pockets of the insurance companies and all the corporations, which is why we are a corporatocracy, not a democracy. Wake up, people. We haven't been a democracy in a long time. We're a corporatocracy.
Well, the other thing that happened when that Brian Thompson got shot is with the American people getting so angry, and these weren't just the poor people. It was the middle class, the upper middle class, pulled out of any investments in the healthcare insurance industry, and the stock is down 30%. That's another way to talk back. And what made me happy about that is they weren't going to be victimized anymore. The heck with what profit United Healthcare made last year, which was billions, and the profit line goes up as the denial rate goes up. They just graph out together. The more denial, the more profit. Even the intelligent upper middle class said, enough is enough. We can't invest in this company anymore. It's immoral. So all the healthcare guys are dropping in the stock market.
Thank you, God. Thank you. This is great news. See, I didn't know this because I don't watch stocks. So, but that tells me a lot. And it also tells me that the consciousness of people is changing, that compassion is on the rise, and greed is just not the okay place for everybody to agree to anymore, because before they do that stuff and everybody would be fine. As long as it's filling my pockets, I'm okay with it. Mm-hmm. It's not the case anymore. The consciousness of the American people is changing, and compassion is being recognized. And the compassion is not going to continue to allow these inhumane practices to continue to go on within every single system in this country. Education, healthcare, you name it, whatever the system is, it's been exploited and it's been corrupted. Mm-hmm. And the change is happening through compassion, through love, through people waking up and saying, this is not okay anymore. This is inhumane. Mm-hmm. This is good news, because none of this is going to change until we make it change. It has not been a country for the people, by the people, of the people. Not for a long time. It's been for the corporations, of the corporations, by the corporations. So that's why they became individuals. Did you notice that? Corporations aren't even companies. They have no morality. Yeah. Somehow they are seen as individuals.
That's legally. So wrong.
That was a whole, whoa. So oh, thank you, our Supreme Court. Anyway, it's just everywhere. You name it. It's insidious. It's like the cloud that hides the sun. And then the people forget the sun's even there. And they think this is normal. It's not. It's not normal. And people are finally waking up, and they're pushing back, and they're saying, no, enough is enough. This is such great news. It's such a great example. I'm so happy to hear this. I don't know how many people realize that this has happened, but these little pushbacks that you're telling me about are wonderful.
Well, what's funny is I have a niece who practices anesthesia now. She's about, I think, 38 or so. Anyway, so she's in a group in Phoenix, and what happened to them was a venture capitalist company did come in and buy their group. Hey, we're buying your group, and we're running you now. And of course, they were a bit worried about what was going to happen to their income, and also their ability to make their own decisions about patient care in anesthesia. Because anesthesia also, besides the operating room, we cover trauma room, we cover the ER, we cover emergency OB, where, women are coming in with serious complications where they might die. Guess who shows up and takes care of it all? Well, the surgeon just gets the baby out. Well, that's hard enough too. But so I said to her, Kristen, are they starting to push you like I'm reading in the anesthesia journals, where they come in, they buy the group, and then they fire the group and bring in a bunch of lower level anesthesia providers?
Again, all about money. Forget about healthcare.
Yeah, and Kristen goes, well, no, they've been pretty good to us so far. They kind of realize that they need to pay the price for a working operating room. And apparently this particular group doesn't particularly want to kill people. It's not a huge healthcare organization. It's a little private equity group. But she said it sure didn't hurt that Brian Thompson got shot. I said, really, Kristen, you feel that made an impact? And
Wow.
oh, she said, oh yeah, we
Look at
saw
that.
it immediately.
How did it show up that she was able to see that in terms of how they responded right after?
Well, yeah, because she's an anesthesiologist. She was one of the ones getting threatened that by Blue Cross that we're not going to pay for long cases anymore. And of course they were upset. And then she said, well, it helped us out that Brian
Wonderful. I see.
got killed.
Right.
So, and I sort of laughed. I said, really, you noticed it immediately? She said, yeah. Man, Blue Cross backed right up. They need to get time to hire enough security for their CEOs if they want to continue like this, you know. I think the insurance industry was shocked. Not just United Healthcare, but all the others were like, oh my God, this is serious pushback. They're going to start shooting us.
Well, you know, I can't. They've been able to get us to blame the poor for being poor and blame the immigrants for all sorts of injustices.
True.
And yet I think people are hopefully starting to realize that a lot of that has just been manipulation.
Mm-hmm. Manipulation by fear. Yeah, we are getting more aware of that as a society. Thank God. Oh, there was one other interesting thing I was going to tell you back in the 1920s when they closed the medical schools they didn't like. Then the guy who was in charge of that, and I can't remember his name, but anybody can find it on Google. He had an idea that we never should be a one-payer healthcare system. We should never allow the government to be the one paying for everybody's healthcare through taxes. And you know what the basis of his belief system was? This is really sick. He felt that we should not be giving healthcare to the Blacks, to unwanted immigrants, that they should be forever kept out and left on their own. And he was a big enough influence that killed at that time any idea that we would, as a government, give health care to all of our citizens. That was pure prejudice.
Wow. That's
pure prejudice. That's in the history books. The article was written to sort of show that this has been an ongoing problem in the American psyche, that we have so much fear around other races, and they're our citizens. We accepted them as our citizens. How can we treat them like shit? You know, like for instance, the British system is one payer. And they have a lot of Blacks and a lot of immigrants over the years. And they're the ones who are citizens are covered under the British healthcare system. And Canada's the same way. So it isn't like other nations haven't done this.
Right. But here's the thing. The ones that are making all the money and that are in the control of all this ultimately, the ones that we never hear about and we don't see, but we know they're there, and it's no longer a secret, and there are many names for them, but we won't call them anything right now because this is going to be going up in social media, and I want people to hear what you have to say. So there you go.
Should I hire
Yes.
a bodyguard?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But the thing is that the control is slipping through now. And before they had total control, and this is how they got it. They pitted us one against another. They pitted men and women against each other. They pitted us against minorities, and they did it through fear. As long as we can look for, out of fear, we'll look for someone to blame. It's kind of built into our the way we operate, or fight or flight. We look to problem solve. Our brain is a problem solver, and if we can find out who caused it or what caused it, we can make it go away and take control. But here's the truth. And then there's the spiritual component. Whatever happened to, things, God being in control, let go and let God. So what ends up happening is that we have to find a scapegoat. For COVID, I mean, how much news was covered on looking for who's to blame?
Blaming the Chinese when it was our project.
It was our project, but we had to find somebody. Yeah, because then the American people would be upset with their government. They didn't want that. So it was all manipulation. It's gotten to a point of, people, whoever's listening to this, if you're listening to the news, you got to know that you're just listening to what they want you to focus on. That's the distraction. That's not the news. That's why they do it over and over again. And that's why if you go to all the stations, they're all the same pretty much. Now, how could that be possible with 300 million or 330 million people living in this country? How could the news actually be the same on all the channels if it weren't controlled? It's the only way that could happen. If you play telephone, but nobody has the same story. And yet somehow we get the same story on all the channels. Wake up. This is not the democracy you think it is. They have total control over what they get you to be distracted by. And meantime, while you're looking over here, what's really going on is over here that you don't see or hear about until it's past. Look how we all bought into the Vietnam War. How many of you knew where Vietnam was on the map when we got into it? What were we doing there? So, yeah. It's wake up time, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. We need to wake up, because if you don't, you're at the control of the ones that you don't want to be controlled by. Not anymore.
Just keep asking questions. Keep an open mind. Don't believe everything you're told. I tried very hard in giving my opinions and my experience in my medical career. I tried very hard to verify it with facts that people can look up, and I'm not making this stuff up. Some of it I was shocked myself to find out about. So yeah, don't believe me, just go do your own research. And do I believe it can be changed, our medical healthcare system? Yeah, I do. I do believe it will change. It may take even more disruption and more people being denied care. But eventually I think it has to get better. Nothing actually tends to go right down the tubes. We do go through cycles where it gets better. When Johnson passed Medicare in 1965, it was considered a huge breakthrough for elderly people who had no access to care, retired people who were so poor. And then it expanded to other useful support systems. I mean, you can be on Medicare if you have chronic renal failure. There's, they opened it up for poor children can be on Medicare. So the intentions were good, and it was considered a great stride forward at the time. But we all like to sit back on our laurels and not keep monitoring. And there were people taking advantage of the system and committing too much fraud, which made the government say, hey, we're going to privatize it. I mean, we'll still have some of it, and we'll still be setting the rules, but we're going to privatize it. And then again, the government didn't keep an eye on it. And instead of fraud, it went to the high for-profit insurance companies, getting a little taken away with things. So, yeah.
I really do believe that, or my hope is, no, it's beyond hope. Once we as a collective, once we as a race, human beings, we all decide that it's not okay to make money off people's ill health. And we go back to creating the cures. I mean, all pharmaceutical industry, they get all their cures from plants. And
They
when
do.
we go back to plants, we'll be able to prevent a lot of the health issues we have that are created from the processed food, from the toxic soil. I'm not being negative here, guys. I'm just stating facts. Do your research on Monsanto and how they've poisoned our soil, which is what feeds our food. So it's in your body. The plastic molecules that are in our bloodstream now, you name it. There are a lot of things that we can do that don't require going down, continuing with the systems that clearly have failed us. But it doesn't mean that things can't get better. In fact, I think they're going to get a lot better as soon as we're willing to let go of the systems as we've known them and get more into preventative health care. Then what we're going to be able to do is see our bodies work for us, because our bodies, they renew themselves every 7 years, the cells. So a lot of it is self-healing, given the right environment with the right foods and right herbs and right care. But we haven't been down this road for a long time, if ever. So that's my hope, that people are going to start to see we have to take responsibility for our health. And yeah, I think I said what I needed to say. It's yeah, there's a way back. There's a way forward, not a way back, but a way forward that's going to bring us back to our true selves, both in mind, body, and spirit. And this is just part of it. So I really appreciate your input. Is there anything else you want to share with us today before we close? I've just so appreciated all the information you've shared, and I've learned quite a few things myself today listening to you. So I'm in a lot of gratitude.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy you had me on, and I guess I would just say to people, keep the faith, keep moving forward, and keep true to yourself, and seek the courage it may take to stand up against the system sometimes. Yep. There are answers to this problem of healthcare.
Yes, there are. Yeah, and there's going to be more and more of that. I think we're really advancing so quickly. We're going to be going into a whole new age with everything, with education, with the medical. It's an exciting time too, but I love that you don't lose hope, because here's the truth. If we see the crumbling, think of crumbling as a negative thing, but how are you going to rebuild a better house if you don't take down the house that's not working anymore?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the Band-Aids are not doing it. We've been putting Band-Aids on these systems for a long time. Band-Aids are not going to work. We need to let them crumble so we can rebuild something that's going to work for us for now, in the present time, not 200 years ago or even 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for your wisdom and for your knowledge, your experience, and just for being who you are. You're an incredible human being that I have been honored to know for many years and hopefully many more to come. So thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.